Thanks for coming out fishing with me this morning. It's a beautiful morning. I've travelled right up to the far end of the North Arm. I haven't done any filming up the North Arm this season, so I thought I would come up here just for something different to show you another part of the reservoir. It's lovely conditions this morning. I've got 3 new Hardy rods that I want to put through their paces. When I broke my Loomis, it kind of made me rethink life, the universe and everything. I fished the same Loomis rods for really probably the last 15 years, and I thought it was time to ring in the changes and try something different. So I bought 3 new Hardy rods, but rather than buying 3 of the same rods, I've got 3 very different rods that I want to use for different tactics. So we'll go through each of them in turn. This is the first rod I want to show you. This is the Hardy Wraith. It's a 9-foot 5-weight rod, and primarily I'm using this rod for fishing dry flies, just to fish dry flies close to the boat, but with a bit of accuracy and a bit of delicate presentation. The line I'm using is by Snowbee, and it's called a Thistledown floater, and it's designed for really excellent presentation. So what I'm doing today is I'm effectively just going to be fishing short lines and fishing a dry daddy, because there's been a lot of daddy longlegs hatching in and around the reservoir at the moment. So I've got to believe the fish might come up and take a dry daddy fly. I haven't seen very many fish rising this morning, but that doesn't mean that they're not there and that they won't rise up to the fly. And it's really just a case of throwing this dry fly out, letting it sit in the water for a little bit, give it a couple of pulls and see if a fish comes and takes. I'm going to fish a number of different spots in the North Arm. I'm going to keep on the move today because I want to try different places and try different rods and tactics in different places. So you've got to believe that there will be fish cruising around in these weed beds. I've started the drift just on the edge of the ripple, not using the drogue, because I'm thinking that I can cover more water. There isn't really that much wind, so the boat isn't going to move particularly fast. It's really all about covering water this morning. The only trouble with this spot is that it's so far up the reservoir, it takes you nearly 45 minutes to an hour to get up here. So you really have to kind of commit to this particular spot for the entire day. Otherwise you would spend half of your day moving up and down the reservoir. So if I was to decide that I didn't like it here and wanted to go up the South Arm, that would probably take me about an hour and a half to navigate. And an hour and a half is a lot of time to spend driving around the reservoir without actually fishing. I'll try different tactics. I'll try leaving the fly static, but I'll also give the daddy a pull back, because sometimes the fish like the fly to be moved. So this 5-weight is casting an absolute dream. And although I primarily use it for short line work, it's hard not to cast a decent line with this. The Snowbee line, it seems to want to really go out there. It's always pulling line off the reel. The only criticism I have of the Snowbee line is the running line is very thin, and it can sometimes get tangled and caught. Okay, so we've tried the dry fly for a few casts and nothing's come up, and there's been nothing showing on the surface. So I'm going to switch rods now and try something a little different. So the second rod I'm using is my Hardy Ultralight. Now this one's a 6-weight, 10-foot. And I bought this rod because I wanted a rod that would be comfortable for the bank and the boat, that would throw a decent line but wouldn't be as heavy as a Loomis 7-weight. And I find the 6-weight is just perfect for that type of fishing. Now off the boat you don't need massive amounts of line, but this rod is fabulous from the bank. It's got real distance, it's got real power, really good for double hauling, and it throws a really nice line. That's as much line as I need to throw today. So I'm fishing with a popper minky, just throwing it out there, letting it sit for a little bit and then pulling it back. Trying to create a little bit of disturbance on the surface in the hope that something big will come up from the depths and grab it. I'm going to fish this drift right across the reservoir into the far bank, hoping that as we get closer to the weed beds the fish will get more active. Now I think there's a lot of clumps of weed in this deeper water, so I think the fish will be cruising. I don't think they'll just be in the shallows, I think they'll be in the deeper water as well. I'm not going to spend too much time in one place today. I've got an itinerary of places that I want to visit. Obviously this is the shallows in and around Tim Appleton's. Next up I'm going to go and fish around the side of the weed beds into Dickinson's Bay. Then I'm going to fish over by the trees, and then a few spots on the north shore of the peninsula. Spots that I would normally fish from the bank, but use the boat to get me out into the drop-off and fish the edge of the weed beds. I know there's fish in and around the weed beds in the South Arm, and I could have just gone back there, but I wanted to show you some different spots. And I don't really fish the North Arm very often. I fish it a lot from the bank, but I don't fish it very much from the boat. I tend to shoot up the South Arm because it's just force of habit, I guess. I've also upped the strength of my leader to 10 pounds because there are some big fish kicking around, and I think continuing to use 8 pound is just asking to be snapped off. I lost a massive fish in Old Hall Bay probably around 15 years ago because I was still fishing with 8 pound line later in the season, and that's a mistake I don't want to make again. I landed the 2 big fish the other week using 8 pound line, but I think that extra 2 pound breaking strain just gives you a little bit more of a sense of security. If you hook into a fish, you feel a bit more confident about being able to play it. Now I've just seen the first evidence of a fish on the surface here. Quite a large one came up, and it looked like it might have been fry bashing, so that's probably because we're getting a bit closer into the shallows now, where we'd expect them. Now that one was a good 20-30 yards in front of the boat, so I'm hoping that we'll cover that area in the not too distant future, and that the large fish may pay a visit to the boat. Let's just put the engine on. Yeah, I can see the ripples in the water where that fish is, so we're now directly in line with it. Hopefully we can intercept it. Now that's the first evidence of fish I've seen today on the surface, but interesting that it is in towards, closer in towards the bank. I'm just going to keep throwing this daddy out there, letting it sit for a bit and then retrieving, covering as much water as we possibly can. We've only seen one fish on the surface, just the one. So I fished right the way across the top of the North Arm, and there was absolutely nothing happening. Now when I motored past here earlier, I saw the odd fish on the surface, and I just saw one rise there, so I'm going to try the dry flies in this area here, just in the hope that there may be some fish feeding in and around the weed beds at the point of the peninsula. So I'm fishing the dry daddy. Oh, that was a fish! Oh, the fish followed the dry daddy. That was first cast in this area, and the fish followed. So there are fish in this area, but they haven't, apart from that very first one, they haven't looked at the dries. I wonder if they're feeding on, if it's the popper minkie as the the fly to try. Right, so now the third rod is set up, and this is my 10-foot 7-weight Hardy Wraith, and I've got this one set up for competition. Set up with 4 flies. I booby on the point, fab on the top dropper, and then 2 nymphs in between. Now I've turned a fish on this already. I changed the flies before I started this drift and turned a fish on one of the very first drifts. So there's fish in this, definitely fish in this area. The wind's changing though. Wind's now coming from the south. That's where it was supposed to be coming from. Now it's definitely coming from that direction. It had veered round to the southwest, but it's gone back to where it's supposed to be. I'm fishing the 6-foot slow intermediate tip, the midge tip, just to get the flies a little bit under the surface. There's been quite a lot of fish showing here, so I'm hoping that we can get some attention on these more garish, ugly flies. I've risen one on the dries. I had a fish on the popper, but I lost it. Sometimes with these hardy rods, it's hard keeping hold of the smaller fish. I don't know why. Now all 3 rods are set up, I can kind of switch tactics to my heart's content. Now this competition tactic worked a couple of weeks ago off the Normanton bank. The fish were following the booby most of the time, and actually I was pulling it in pretty fast. Now that was a fish went for that fly but didn't take. It's in the vicinity. Oh, it's on, it's on. Or is it off? No, it's off again. Oh, that's infuriating. Oh, well, at least we're getting some fishy action. You must have seen that one. Couldn't have missed it, but it just came about 2 or 3 times. So obviously the competition setup is attracting them. Is it going to be one of those days with lots of takes but none landed? I had to induce the take there. I had to literally strip that popper back. I had 2 fish within the space of 2 casts. Oops, it's come off. No, it's still on. God, I'm making a mess of this, John. Ah. Yeah, it's foul hooked. It's a rainbow that's foul hooked. It's obviously come and tried to take the fly and got caught in the tail. I'll get this one in quickly. Oops. Right. That is the first foul hooked fish of the year. That's not happened. No, it's not. It's taken the fly. It's just the fish is damaged. The fish has actually got some damage on the tail. Oh, I thought I'd foul hooked it because I saw that mark. I thought it was the fly, but it's not. It's taken the popper. I had just switched rods. I'd switched back to the 6-weight and put the popper on, and the wind had just changed as well. And it's brought the drift back along beside these weed beds where the fish I think had been feeding, and that one took the popper. So we'll get this one back. It's something has really had a go at that. But let's get it. There we go. That's it. It's gone back nicely. Not the monster fish I was catching last week, but hey, literally, I'd just gone back to the Hardy ultralight 6-weight. So I've actually proven that having these rods pre-set up does allow you to switch tactics very, very quickly. Right, we've got a fish on the competition setup now. I'm off the Normanton bank. I decided to come down a bit further, and on the very first cast with the competition setup down here, I've got a fish. So we've actually ended up, today's turned into a bit of a challenge now, because it's going to be, can I catch a fish on all the 3 rods? I just had a feeling it might be okay down here. I don't think this is particularly big, but it's kind of smashed the booby. I think it's gone after the booby. Yes, it's gone after the booby. It just must be one of the new stockies that's just gone in. Just play it gently. I don't think there's anything to write home about. I think it's just a stocky. Because I'm fishing the long leader, I'll have to stand up to net it. Come on. That's in the net, nicely into the net. Fish number 2. Now, I've got to try and catch a fish on the dry fly rod. That's a decent fish. That's been in for quite a while. A lot of silver on the tail. The fly has come out. It's nothing to write home about. Probably about 2.5. Lovely tail. Really nice tail. So let's get it nice and safely back in the water. Fine to go back. Yes, it's gone straight down into the depths. So we managed to get a fish on 2 of the rods. I guess I'm going to have to go dry fly all the way now to try and make it a fish on every single rod. Oh, that fish came and had a look. Oh no, that fish came up and headed and tailed right where the dry fly was. So they're actually rising up to dry flies as well. So we might get one on the dry fly. And that was the first cast with a dry fly on this drift. I've got a daddy long legs and a kind of sugar cubed orange nymph. There's a lot of daddy long legs being blown onto the water, so I've got one on. I've got to believe they're going to come up and have a go at that at some point. Oh, if we missed that one, that would have been it. First cast. I'm ruining the ones I missed earlier. The fish off Carrot Creek, there was a lot of them, but I don't think they were feeding properly. I think it was stockies that have just gone in and they're still trying to learn what to do. Make sure I dangle those flies over the surface as I get near the boat, because it's quite often the fish will take right at that last minute. Oh, there's a fish at the fly. Ah, it's not taken though. Oh, this is infuriating. They're definitely looking at this fly. It's still forward. It's still forward. Ah, it's on. Excellent. We've done it. A fish on every single rod. Now this is only a small one, so it'll probably come off. But we've done it. I didn't say I would land them all. I just said I would catch on every one. This is the problem with this wraith. Is small fish seem to be able to shake the hook. That's taken the sugar cube. That fish has taken the sugar cube. I'll show you what the fly looks like when I get it in. We've done it. Today's challenge that wasn't planned, to get a fish on every single one of the 3 rods on 3 different, completely different tactics. You do get your money's worth playing a fish on a 5-weight rod. into the net. Oh, what a wonderful day. It's been hard, I have to say, but we've done it. Oh, fabulous. Right, the fly's out, the fish is back in the net. There you can get a good look at it. Another decent fish, quite a lot of silver in the tail, so this was probably one of the ones that was stopped back in June, July. But it's in the net. Right, we'll get this one nice and safely released, and I'll show you the fly that I caught it on. So there it goes, nice little fish. In we go. And away. So this is the fly that did the damage. Little orange sugar cube. You wonder how the fish can see that. But that fish absolutely followed that. It absolutely wanted it. And I had 2 fish in 2 casts, so there must be something about this fly they like. Well, thanks for coming out fly fishing with me again on Rutland water. It's been a fabulous end to the day. This morning was incredibly hard. First 4 hours I just never saw anything up the North Arm, and then found the fish off Barnhill Point, but they weren't really playing, they were hard to get. It was only really when I came down here to Normanton that it really turned on. But the purpose of today's video was to introduce you to the 3 new Hardy rod and reel setups. And I'm using them to fish very different techniques. I didn't expect that I would catch a fish on all 3 different techniques on the same day. So I'll finish in the usual way. If you like the video, please make sure you hit the like button. And I would be delighted if you would subscribe to the channel to see more of my fishy adventures. Thanks for watching.